Welcome back to the Everything Sucks Now What podcast, a merriment making method for a messy world. I'm your host, Mary England, and it's March, so we're talking about money all month long. And inside of the Positive Pulse, we are doing weekly tap and talks on money as well as bonuses. So make sure to join us inside the Positive Pulse, uncustomary.org. And today we are going to talk about something that is hemorrhaging every single day and you might not even notice. It's not your money, it is your attention, your focus. So you probably have an app on your phone that tracks your spending, even if it's just your online banking. You know how much you dropped on an embarrassing DoorDash order at 1 a.m., or at least you can check it. You know what your bank balance is. But do we actually know where our attention went to today, yesterday? Do we have any idea? Usually not really. It just kind of leaks out, into our phones and the void and comment sections where people that you don't even know are fighting about something that's probably not going to matter in 72 hours. The thing that we don't really talk about with money is that attention is money. Literally, neurologically, it is built on neural pathways. Your brain is physically constructing architecture based on what you're looking at and what you're paying attention to. So if you are spending a lot of time in the morning, just doesn't even need to be doom scrolling, but just on your phone, or you are doom scrolling on economic collapse content, and your evening watching routine is like everything is rigged kinds of videos and things that are really spiking your adrenaline. Well, then congratulations. You are renovating your mental real estate into like a bunker. I'm not saying to ignore reality. Reality is real. Great, noted. And there's a difference between being informed and educated and then being marinated inside of panic. So let's get a little more tangible and visual with this. So maybe you wake up and before you've even had your caffeine, your nervous system has already absorbed corruption and collapse and a billionaire who did something really gross, the state of the housing market, some other thing that's broken on a macro or micro level. And your brain goes, okay, so the world is fundamentally falling apart and you would like me to go to work? Okay, fine. And it files that away. And then you walk through your day and your brain is looking, actively hunting for evidence that confirms that thing that you filed in your brain, that the world is fundamentally falling apart. And it doesn't need to be that you are someone who intrinsically even has a pessimistic attitude. It's just how your brain works. Confirmation bias is like a feature that we have in our body as a software. It's not necessarily a virus, that we get like on a computer if we're making that analogy, but it's just something that we have available to us, but we don't always have to use it so much. And the problem really becomes like how we handle the wheel when we are panicking. And a lot of times what we do is we're just telling our car, our computer, whatever we want to do ourselves, that we want to find more of this, find more panic. Cynicism feels smart. It feels validating. I know that it does. It feels like you figured something out. This happened, then this happened. So A plus B always equals C. You are not a naive idiot when you feel like this. You know what I mean? Like you feel like you have risen above naivety and innocence. And then you start kind of even looking at people who have the potential in their heads, the possibility, the even realistic, practical optimism in their heads of believing that good things can happen to them or other people or people who try hard. You're just like, no, that's not me. I'm not a naive idiot. I know that I'm smart. I'm better off for it. I figured this out. I have great pattern recognition and I'm moving forward with that. And the thing is that I think cynicism is it's limiting. It's contraction. And it's just dressed up. It's like we're walking around Carmen Sandiego style in a trench coat and everything that's like building us up is cynicism and contraction and limitation. And it really narrows everything down. It closes doors. It protects you from being disappointed, absolutely, but it also protects you from trying. Do you remember when I was talking about conscious luck in a previous episode this month about how people who are lucky are looking for doors? They're looking for opportunities and they're not just being aware that the door is there and that the door is open, but they're walking through it and they're trying what's in there. But I think the opposite thing happens with cynicism, where we're like, mm-mm, I don't trust what's behind that door. I don't know who's there. I don't trust anything. What is that? Put that down. I am not buying into anything. And I have made a really hard personal, not even, I don't want to say 180, but a transition and evolution in terms of naivety and cynicism. I had many personal experiences where trust was very much pulled out from under me, like dating people that I didn't even know their real names for multiple years. And I I know what happens with our bodies where we're just like, nope, A plus B equals C. I don't care. I don't trust anyone or anything anymore. And I'm not gonna look for doors. And if I see them, certainly not gonna walk through them. And what happens is that you start believing that you're right about everything and that you can predict the future. And I think that there just needs to kind of be a balance. First of all, I don't believe that naivety is a bad thing. Naivety is trust. It's believing that something's possible. And when someone dupes you, cons you, tricks you, lies to you, you are not an idiot or an asshole or unintelligent for believing in that thing. You are someone who is willing to be vulnerable and to trust. They're the asshole for lying to you, not the other way around. And naivety is also a function of deception, meaning that if you are someone who does lie and con and whatever, you can also be conned. You just need to believe in something else. The thing that you want to believe has to be something that you care about and value so much. That's why you're willing to believe it. Now, what happens when we kind of course correct and maybe over course correct with our boundaries when we're like, oh my God, I was just like walking around free, open to the world, and then I got a reality check, so to speak, and now I'm not going to trust anything or anyone. It ends up being the complete opposite. And then you stop participating, you stop trying, you stop trusting altogether. Maybe the middle ground is like having a healthy skepticism of things, but letting yourself be willing to have your mind changed, letting people be able to prove you wrong, not having a set point that everything is bad, people are bad, people like this are bad, things that are in my life that will happen or in the future will continue to be bad, disappointing, etc. Maybe it's like, okay, now I have more knowledge. I'm aware of like different ways that people can trick me if they'd like to, but that doesn't mean that I have to fall for it. And maybe I can have some sort of like scan of a checklist or something in my head that's like, okay, no, this is too high of a red alert, red flag for me. So I am going to take a step back and maybe I can come back to it and take a look at it when I'm not feeling like more charged or whatever. And I can make a better decision. But it doesn't mean that that thing always has to be a scam, that we always have to be cynics. Cynics? Skepticism and cynics. Cynics. I kind of like it. Okay, so I I like to think of things in terms of courtrooms sometimes. I find it to be helpful with thought work and perspectives because it looks so it's a tangible example, but it's also a way that we can kind of like put something out and do it as like a an objective third party kind of thing, right? So let's look at it from a courtroom standpoint. The prosecution says something like, money is the root of all evil. And then the defense says, well, Your Honor, with respect, money is also the root of vacations and cancer treatment and scholarships and art and your grandmother's hip replacement and surprise birthday parties. So would the prosecution like to cross-examine the birthday parties? You know what I mean? Like, I think when we have these thoughts that come into our heads, whether they're imparted by a lack of trust or wanting to be safe, because really that's ultimately what happens with everything, right? Our limiting beliefs, so to speak, always come from just wanting to be safe. So we make these like generalizations and assumptions and predictive thinking, and we feel validated when we find something that feels like it's proof of that. But what if we decided to be a little bit more neutral and let the things speak for themselves? Investigate each thing individually. So if you have this thought that's like money is the root of all evil, is this objectively true? Take it to a courtroom, play the prosecution and the defense for that specific statement in your head. So maybe you do have some sort of belief about money that everyone who has a lot of money over this like this number is an evil asshole. Let's take it to the defense. What would the defense cross-examine and say? What do you believe about yourself and what it would mean for you to make more money? We talked last week about like all of the um, things that can happen in terms of like raising ourselves up with the fears that keep us there. Is it that we're scared of being more responsible or being more of a target? All of these things. Take that to the faux courtroom. And then the thing is that even inside of a courtroom, we don't know the truth. You act like you are the jury or the judge, and you're looking at it and you're like, I wasn't there. I don't know. I don't know the truth. So I'm going to listen to both sides, and that's how I am going to make a decision. This is kind of how my brain works when I am being an existential joy philosopher, looking at the in between, looking at the nuance and the rainbow in between the black and white. So, how can you do this with yourself, with your beliefs? And since we're talking about money this month, let's look at money as neutral. Money amplifies, right? We talked about this. So, if you're generous, having more money will amplify your ability to be generous. If you're bitter, it will amplify your bitterness. Money is basically a personality like highlighter, which means the most important question isn't necessarily how do I get more money, but who am I becoming? Because that person is about to get a fucking megaphone. So here's another thing. The best way to help people is to be resourced, to get resourced. And I don't mean it in the like therapy kind of way of like, I feel very resourced and I'm able to respond to this problem in a healthy way, which is, it's a real thing. I wish there were more ways to describe that. But what I mean by resourced is literally resources, having money, not to hoard wealth, not to step on people, but to get resourced. You cannot give sustainably from a depletion standpoint, from debt. You cannot build anything meaningful from a place of chronic scarcity and fear and lack. And I know that that sounds like something that a finance bro would embroider on a throw pillow and think it was ironic and funny or campy. I don't know, but it is actually just true. You have to build the capacity first and then you scale the generosity. There are a lot of people that you can look at in business that do this very well. So, I mean, the problem is that a lot of the times the pillar examples are people that were like, I don't know about them. But just because what they end up doing with their money isn't something that you would do or agree with in terms of your values, that doesn't mean that the strategy that they utilized is incorrect or not beneficial in a way that could work for you. The same way that, like, if you get $20, you're going to spend it on something different than someone else would. So if we look at someone like Hormozy or Elon Musk, they understood that it was actually better for everyone in the long run to help people that were wealthy first. And this is such a very difficult thing to wrap our head around because we're like, why would we help wealthy people? They have the most resources. But the reason that we do that is because we then get that money and then we get to decide what to do with it. It's very difficult to start to think this way, whether you're starting out or have been doing it for over a decade, because most of the time, merriment makers are people who prioritize kindness and generosity and service, maybe above all else. And when you're like, well, if I'm going to only help rich people, that feels like selling out. It feels like all these other things. But If you are only charging $1 for things that are taking you way more money, time, energy, all these things, and you're doing it so that you can help people who need it the most, you are not you're not going to get very far because you're not going to be able to pay your own bills and then you're going to have to quit completely, or you are really not going to be able to help that many people at all because you're just not going to be able to grow. And also, a lot of the time when we make things such a low price, people just straight up don't value them. That might mean that they don't purchase it in the first place. And it might mean that once they purchase it, they don't think it's worth something and they don't prioritize using it. So I think ultimately, based on the way that the economy and the systems are set up currently, maybe the best way is to have the ability to have higher ticket items, which means targeting a different audience at the beginning and then utilizing that as a bridge to be able to come back and look at the audience of the people that really need it, what you are originally passionate about. So, for example, maybe you spend 6 months, a year, a couple years working with a higher money bracket audience in a way that's not necessarily your passion, but then once you have those resources, then you're like, okay, now I can actually get this to the masses. The thing that I'm originally passionate about, I can now market and I have the funding to be able to do that. Maybe I can just give it away for free, you know? We have to be kind along the way, obviously, but when we are stable, it expands our options and it's not, I mean, that part we can look at as controversial in terms of values, but it is also simply math. So I want to talk about where you're leaving potential on the table, not just money potential, but your fun potential, your connection potential, and the courage to try the thing potential, to look for the open doors, to walk through them, and to participate in them. When we're scared, it drains our mental capacity. When we are avoiding something, especially when it's like on our minds, but just in our subconscious, that's draining our mental capacity. Scrolling on screens constantly drains it. And the part that really actually kind of breaks my brain when I think about it is that if you're avoiding your finances and you're avoiding your relationships, you're not avoiding two separate things necessarily. You're actually just practicing disconnection as part of a lifestyle. Sometimes it's coming from like a place of apathy, like you genuinely don't care. But if you're listening to this, I would bet more money that that's not the case, and it's more from a fear standpoint. Money is relational. Business is relational. Having an audience in your business is relational. So are you actually building a human connection or are you just like collecting numbers? It's very easy to get into this space because we are so fear driven, because money is so tied to our ability to be and feel safe and have our basic necessities met. But are you actually like giving a shit about your original mission? Do you care about the people, or are you just trying to get followers and purchases and all these kinds of things? Where has your heart gotten hard? Where have you become jaded? Where and when did your hope for people and society start to dim? And you might be like, oh, I have a million answers for that. And that's fair. But I want you to really think back maybe to one of the first ones. Because as much as there are innumerable amounts of things that we can point to and look at in the society, in our government, internationally, in the economy, all of these things that are making our hearts hard, ourselves angry because it's irritating our values, I want you to also look as personally as you can get, as granular as you can get in terms of when do you feel like you were fucked over personally? When did you feel like you saw behind a curtain and you couldn't unsee it? And then I want you to take a look at that and be like, okay, how can I play the courtroom game here? How can I be like, this is what happened. And as a result, the witness or the prosecution, whoever you are, is is traumatized from this and they can't come back from it. And make this like very black and white argument, right? Because that's what people do in courtrooms. They're trying to make it look like you're either innocent or you're guilty. So play that role for yourself for the original belief, the original stimulus that created that belief. And ask yourself, like, within this courtroom scenario, is it true that she can't come back from it? Is it true that this is objectively fucked? Is it true that all people are bad? Is it true that because this happened, I can expect specific outcomes in the future in the exact same way? Is there no room for nuance? Is there no room for growth? Is there no room for healing? And if you look at it and you can objectively say yes, then what you're looking at is probably a fact. Like Alaska is a state in the United States. But if it's not objectively a fact, then it's subjective, which means that there's room to wiggle around. And now the question is just, do you want to try to wiggle or do you want to stay stuck? Cynicism becomes expensive. It has a real cost to it, and it costs you the doors that you might not open. Most people are obsessed with velocity, how fast they're growing, how fast the money is coming in, how fast, how fast, how fast. But volume really does matter as well. And this can also look like how much love can move through you. How many relationships can you actually steward? How much space can you have for other people before you run out of the room? Attention is something, bringing it back to the beginning, that determines both volume and velocity. What you amplify expands. And it's not this manifestation nonsense. It's just the fact that this is our operating principle from our brains and our systems as a human being. Let's go inside for a second. I think a lot of this always ends up coming back to worth, our self-worth. And I think that you know this. I know that you know this. You've heard it. You've journaled about it. You know that this is the concept, like in a theory way, but not tangibly necessarily. Because when fear shows up, like really shows up in your brain, in your body, 2 a.m., tight chest, it doesn't really matter what you journaled. That fear doesn't give a shit about what you said or how you processed it. It just goes, you're behind. You're not enough. You suck. Why haven't you fucking figured this out yet? And we can't necessarily always control the fact that that has happened, that that's come up, but we do get to decide like how we respond to them. You either let those thoughts run the rest of the night, the whole show, your whole body take over, or you might avoid them so hard that you end up on your phone looking at like anything else for 3 hours just to not try to think about it. They're both very protective strategies to feel safe. Your nervous system learned those moves when you've been overwhelmed. Makes sense. Those feelings are not wrong, but the thing is that a lot of those thoughts aren't necessarily even yours for the beginning. Like they got handed to you from a parent or a teacher or culture or an advertisement or some sort of narrative about who is winning and who loses in this world and how you might not look like any of the people who are winning. You absorbed it when you were small and you didn't have a filter yet, and it's just been echoing around there ever since. But your thoughts can change. If something is not factual, it is subjective and there is room for wiggling. If a thought gets caught in your head, that means that it can get out. You can untangle it and get it out. If you can reject a compliment, and you can, we do it all the time, then you can reject a limiting belief. Rewiring is repetition and rechoosing and doing those two things over and over again until the new thing is louder. People talk a lot about the law of attraction, but before attraction, there is attention. If you are someone that's amplifying resentment, then your resentment's going to grow. If you amplify service, service grows. If your main goal is to be validated externally, then you will chase applause forever, and it's never going to be enough. If your main goal is actual service with helping someone and solving a real problem that means something to you, You will build something that doesn't fall apart when the algorithm changes. Stop asking how people can pay you and start asking, how can I serve so well that value just naturally circulates back because it is undeniably necessary and helpful. A little audit that you can ask yourself is, where is your attention going right now? Is your attention compounding fear or is it compounding possibility? Money is not just a financial entity. It is energetic and it is directional and it is relational. And if you want more of it in any form, you're going to have to start by deciding what you're feeding. Not blindly feeding and not delusionally, but like deliberately, man. You know, we have to imagine that we're in a relationship with money. We have a relationship with ourselves, self-love. We can have a relationship with money because you are feeding something every day, but you got to make it something that's worth growing. In the next episode, we're going to talk about how to release shame and barriers that are blocking expansion. But for now, just do that little audit with yourself gently and take a look at how you are kind of prioritizing your attention and get a little bit more deliberate about it. Okay. Inside of the Positive Pulse, we have a bonus pack that is going to talk about attention as mental currency and money currency because attention equals energy equals direction. We're going to have a money audit. We're going to have a Doomscroll reset challenge and courtroom reframe exercises and cynicism checks and rewiring scripts. So if you are interested in getting the bonus pack that comes with this episode, check out the Positive Pulse at uncustomary.org and you can start for free for an entire week and see if it's something that you like. And also, you can get access to the live tap and talks that also have the replays and bonuses as well. All right. Thank you so much for joining in. I will see you next week. Remember that you have to feel good to do good. I love you. Bye.